Yeah, so as a kid and when I was younger, I was never really had it explained to me what being gay or not being straight was. There are a lot of non-straight people in my life, but the actual concept of being gay was never really explained to me, and I didn't even really, I didn't, and even though those people were in my life and I knew them well, it just didn't occur to me that that was a thing.
It was, I guess the first time I was like actually aware of it, or actually aware that it could be applied to like me and not just other people, was in fifth grade. We were making little time capsules, and she looked over at someone's and she said, "Oh, that's so gay." And I was like, "What?" And I just looked so uncomfortable. And it's because at the time I like I was sort of realizing slowly that there was that something was up, and that something was a little bit different.
And for me, I had sort of like always known that I wasn't just a girl or that I wasn't a girl. But I started like looking for my identity, and I think it's kind of funny. A lot of my education on queerness came from Tumblr.
Tumblr. I don't know, like I was never really like introduced to the idea of not being straight because I went to a religious Catholic school. It just like wasn't something that was talked about. So like the first time that I ever like questioned my sexual orientation was the first time that I had ever like considered sexuality as a whole.
My uncle, my dad's brother, he is gay. I was introduced to this like positive gay figure in my life, and I love him so much.
I think it might have been in elementary school. I don't know what happened, but I was pushed by a friend, I think, into a guy friend of mine. And I think he said, "Oh, that's gay," or something.
Well, I grew up next to lesbians who had children, and they were super cool. So, like, that was the first time I was, like, exposed to the idea of not being straight, and, like, that seemed really normal to me. But the first time I probably really started thinking about it was when I was, like, in middle school, and I started having friends who identified as queer, and my sister came out as gay when I was in middle school. And so those were the first times I really started thinking about it and like thinking about being queer as like a thing that I personally could be instead of just like people around me.
Throughout a lot of like elementary school, I didn't really have like a concept of human sexuality, but like I'm saying that in the way that a lot of people say that, which is like straight was just kind of the default, and like I didn't think about it because it just was, and there weren't other options. But I mean, the earliest I was really introduced to it was like relatives of mine who are queer. My dad's cousin, one of my dad's cousins, was in a long-term relationship with a woman named Sue, and we visited them, and it was just like, oh, this is, Deb and Sue are partners, and I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that Sue was like, this cool lady who taught me how to like, roast s'mores over a campfire.
That it was possible to like for actual people to be queer and not just sort of some abstract notion.
Hi, I'm Leo. I just graduated from School Without Walls High School. I'm going to go study film in Chicago next year, and I am trans non-binary. Here's a picture of me next to my sister from, I want to say, 5 or 6 years ago. I'm on the right in that blue jacket. And then here's one of me from just a few months ago. So I just came out this year, in 2018. And as I was experimenting with my gender, I came to realize just how important access to information, and more specifically, vocabulary, is to experimentation with gender and sexuality. Lack of access to vocabulary just makes the coming out process even harder than it already is. As reported by the Human Rights Campaign, over 92% of LGBTQ youth say they hear negative messages about being LGBTQ, and one of the top sources for these messages is sadly at school. While society as a whole has certainly become much more accepting of the LGBTQ community than it was even just a few years ago, lingering sentiments still project ideas of dirtiness and abnormality surrounding what it means to be queer. As reported by the Trevor Project, which is an organization dedicated to preventing youth suicide, especially in teens that identify as trans, teens that see themselves as part of the queer community are 33% more likely to attempt suicide than teens who identify as straight, and are more than 4.5 times as likely to abuse drugs or alcohol than their straight counterparts. So there's clearly something going wrong here. Even as governmental progress like marriage equality passes through the Supreme Court and we see more and more queer representation in the media, young kids that identify as part of the LGBTQ community are dying at unprecedented rates. And as I said earlier, I think the disconnect between the reality of the situation and what is represented in school has a lot to do with that.
We were taught in school that like being gay was like a sin, and if it was ever mentioned. So really like the only resource I had was Tumblr and my friend who went to public school.
Not really, to be honest. My school didn't address it that much. When I got to high school, that was when all of the topics started being addressed a lot more. But when I was younger, it didn't happen at all, and I feel like if it did, it was just very quick and then it was brushed aside.
We had health class in 5th grade, like a mandatory reproductive health class. Never talked about that.
Absolutely none.
Yeah, in
None at all.
school?
Yeah.
Absolutely none. There were no resources for me anywhere except for on my iPod Touch. Which
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like I knew like my middle school and high school had like a GSA, but that was like it. And like my schedule, I never felt comfortable going to them because when I was like starting to think about queer identities, I still thought like kind of thought I was straight, which is like kind of ridiculous. But like I didn't feel comfortable being in those spaces yet, and so like the personal resources did not exist, which is why the internet is so great. But like schools don't have anything for us.
In my elementary school, there wasn't that much because it was a primarily Christian school and more conservative, I'd say. But I go to Sybil now, which is pretty like free, I guess, more liberal, and that had like a lot of resources. And like there, I was like really, I felt safer.
Absolutely none. There was no GSA when I was there, and the reason I didn't know what gay was because no one ever talked about it. There was one queer couple when I was in 8th grade in the grade below me, but other than that there was nothing, and I was one of 3 openly queer kids in my school besides my girlfriend, well, eventual girlfriend. But so all of my resources came from the internet, and I just like hid the fact that I was gay.
I read like a lot of books too, like novels that had queer or genderqueer characters in them as well, and like those were also ended up being really important to me. And there's 2 books that I have that are really important to me because I read one of them while I was coming out as bi, and one when I was coming out as genderqueer, and they're about like gay and genderqueer people respectively, and they ended up being really important to me. But coming out, it was really hard because I had to find those resources. I had to search them out. I had to figure them out, and to search for them, the prerequisite for that was that I had to be thinking about them. And I had to be thinking like, maybe this is not quite who I am. Maybe I'm not quite a straight woman, and I shouldn't have to seek out resources.
Yeah.
They should be provided to me.
I really think that Charlie said it really well when talking about this idea that in today's society, in order to come out, to realize that you don't identify as straight, you have to already be thinking about it, because you're not going to be exposed to the vocabulary and to the ideas unless you personally seek them out.
So my mom was the first person I really talked to about it. She asked me, so I was dating a girl in 6th grade, and so she asked me if we were dating. And I said, and I was like, I didn't really say yes, but she could tell that the answer was yes. And so she was like, I love you no matter what. And she was like, asked me like, was there a time that you knew? And I was like, I don't know. So like, there wasn't really a conversation, but it was just kind of like, she knew.
Yeah, for me, I just wish it was something that was like just introduced to me like when I was younger. Like I just assumed I was straight.
Yeah. everyone assumes someone is straight all the time, and you do that to yourself.
The thought I'm gay didn't really materialize in my head until I was talking to my friend who had a gay uncle, and then I came out to him about 30 seconds later, and that was the first person I came out to.
I wonder if like being gay, but more specifically the process of coming out has helped me be a better scientist. No, I'm serious. Because it's about self-honesty, and empiricism is also about self-honesty and outward honesty. And so I like the process of coming out is about admitting something that you don't necessarily want to admit to yourself. And the process of science is also like, oh no, the data doesn't fit this amazing, beautiful theory I have, but I'm gonna have to tell everyone that it just isn't like that. Like, it's just admitting the facts and the truth, and having to be really, really entirely honest, even when it's not really very pleasant. So I think, and then in the end, it's sort of a positive thing that you've been honest, because it'll allow you to be honest in the future, and it feels so much better.
When I first came out, I'm so glad, because I went to Sidwell, and it was just so supportive, and I loved it. Like, I honestly couldn't have asked for anything better.
It's funny because part of me doesn't really consider myself out, because I've had very few conversations with people where I say, like, I'm non-binary or I'm not straight. But I did come out, like, sexual orientation wise around middle school, but that was, honestly, I don't really remember it as being stressful. I think there was a situation where like I had come out to quite a few people, I guess. Like, they had asked me if I was straight, and I said no. And like, I still don't really fully have like a label that I belong to. I usually say I'm pansexual when people ask, and then they ask me like, what's that? And then I have to explain, which is a little bit annoying, but it's okay.
I didn't come out, like, it took me a long time to just first be sure, because like there was a process of like, oh wait, maybe this is a thing, at first just being like, oh, I'm just a straight ally, and then realizing, that period of being like, oh, I'm not gay, I'm just like, I'm definitely an ally, and then being like, wait.
I don't know. I feel like in the movies, there's this idea that like you tell one person and then the whole world knows, which is kind of how I expected it to go. But for me, I kind of see it as like a progression of telling people.
So I think I was pretty scared in the beginning, like what my parents would say. Like, I knew they were, super accepting and they loved me no matter what. But like, I was just worried, about what they would say.
I was in 8th grade, and at my school, every person had to get confirmed. And basically, confirmation is when you kind of like, you're an adult now, and you can kind of make your own decisions. So you're like reaffirming your faith in Catholicism, and you're especially like kind of reaffirming your support to the church. And I like decided that I didn't want to get confirmed because, I didn't want to reaffirm my commitment to a church that didn't like who I was.
Yeah.
And I got in like massive fights with my parents about it, and like I hadn't come out to them, and so they didn't really understand where I was coming from. Both of them were pretty religious, and I was in the Stroh-Snyder's parking lot, and my mom and I were like fighting about it again, and like it just like came out. I was like, Mom, I don't want to get confirmed because I'm gay. I was like sobbing in the parking lot. But so then I ended up not getting confirmed. She told my dad, and then I told my brother. And then I didn't tell anyone else till I graduated from my school in 8th grade. And then I told the rest of my friends. And then I went to high school, and I decided to be completely out.
When I came out as bi, I had friends who were just like, we know, like, it's like not a surprise, and that made like that process easier. And like I said before, my sister had come out before me, so that made my process easier coming out to my family, because I knew that they already were accepting of queer identities. And then coming out as genderqueer was like harder because there are so few people like in my direct life who identify that way, and like my parents, like the word wasn't really something that they had heard before, so it was like kind of an inaccessible thing for them, which made it like a lot harder. And like they didn't negatively react, but like my dad was just like, what is that? And like it was like he didn't ask me what it was, he just went, I just don't know what that is. And it was like kind of heartbreaking, because you know, when you come out, you want it to be like, oh, I'm this thing, and half people would just be like, okay, cool. But the process of coming out as genderqueer wasn't just like, oh, I'm this thing, okay, cool. It was, oh, I'm this thing, and then had to like qualify what it was and like explain to people that it's real and valid.
I shouldn't be obligated to explain what this means to every single person I talk to.
Like I obsess over my negative thoughts, and at the time of like being unsure about my sexuality, my negative thoughts were like, you are not queer, you're faking it. Like, and that, like, I just got stuck in a cycle of like, you know, of thought and like, and not being able to like escape, because like, about myself, and if it's about yourself, it's not an outward thing, it's not something you can change. It's like, it's something that like is true about you, and that's scary.
When it comes to deciding how you identify and what label you want to use for yourself, if you even want to use a label, there are a lot of options, for lack of a better word. And within the queer community, we often call this alphabet soup, this idea that the acronym LGBTQ can go on and on forever. There are so many different versions of it. So if you are someone who likes to use labels, sometimes finding the one that's right for you can be really hard.
For me, labels, I feel as though labels are very necessary, but I don't feel as though they're mandatory. So I think that like the way that like the world works kind of requires people to identify themselves, and it's extremely alienating and hurtful when you don't have a word to call your own.
But something that I really wish kind of someone had like come up to me and told me was that one, like how you define yourself like changes over time. I was so stressed about like finding like the right thing that defined me, and I didn't realize that you could change it. And then I really wish someone had told me that like, I feel like a lot of people kind of put sexual orientation in boxes, and they're like, okay, like you're either in this box or you're in this box, and there's no real like, I don't know, like shades of gray in between. And so then I think when I was in high school, I realized that I liked girls a lot more than I liked guys, and it was just like super confusing for me, because no one had told me that like you could have like varying levels of attraction to different genders. I kind of like had always assumed that like you were like 50% into guys and 50% into girls, which is like not accurate.
I'm a very organized person. Like I color code my calendar. Like I need structure and order. I make plans like to the minute. Like I am so organized. I hate disorder. I hate spontaneity. So these words are really important to me, and like I really strongly associate with them.
We're all kind of raised with like this idea of like what a gay person is. Like forget even like other like more specific labels. Like it's like you are either gay or straight, and a straight person is like this and a gay person is like this, and you are one of these two things. The term queer for me was like I'm not gay enough to use that label. Like maybe I'm bisexual, but like I'm definitely not pansexual, and I definitely am not queer. Like I wouldn't use those terms for me because I've seen gay people, and I'm just not gay enough.
I think the first thing that I started experimenting with was how I dressed, because a large part of like how you express your gender can be like how you choose to dress. And I was kind of torn because of what other people wanted from me, like what my parents or what religion wanted from me, and what I felt most comfortable in. One time I had picked out this outfit, and we were gonna go to like a basketball game or something, and I had picked out this outfit, and it was really like, I guess androgynous, like very masculine, like, and my mom was like, you look like a boy. And I remember feeling like, okay, why is that a bad thing? Like when I wore that outfit, when I looked more androgynous, my parents were like, what are you doing? You're not a boy. Like, what's wrong with you? And like, I would like sort of hate myself because I didn't know how to like separate who I was from who they wanted me to be or from who anyone wanted me to be. And that's when I really like started to learn that like the feelings of like distaste for who I am have come from like me being taught that who I am is distasteful.
I, for a long time, was kind of like adhering to expectations of femininity. And like that's why for me it took me a really long time to figure out that I wasn't cis and like that I'm not female, because I was really like feminine for so long and I hadn't let masculinity be a part of my life for a really long time. And so I finally kind of embraced it and let myself think about it, and I'll cut all of my hair off, and like I started wearing pants again, which I hadn't for literally years, and like I was a lot more secure in who I was because I started stopping thinking about what other people would think if I started changing what I was doing, and just kind of knowing that I need to do this for my health and my happiness. And once I kind of started to accept that, I became a lot more secure in my identity and who I was.
It's like, for me, it's like two separate things. So I'm non-binary and then I'm a lesbian. And it's like, I know a lot of people see that like gender and sexuality is like intertwined, but I feel like for me it's just, I like girls, and then I also don't really conform to the gender binary.
I sort of shy away from the word gay or word lesbian because I feel like I've definitely had crushes on like non-binary people and stuff like that, and it's just sort of like, well, I don't feel like it's really makes sense to call myself gay. And also then like weird like gender feelings and feeling like, okay, like maybe I'm a girl, but if I'm a girl, I'm just sort of a girl by default. Like it's not something meaningful to my identity, you know? Yeah. Like I'm just sort of like a human person. And so I feel like the word queer encompasses that as well. So I think I would probably tend to say queer more now, although this is sort of a recent update.
Recent update on Sophia's life.
So I'd say right now I identify pretty strongly with the word queer.
So I identify as queer. Took me a long time to settle on that one, but I really like identifying as it because I don't really believe in labels a lot, but I'm really like firm on like not hiding who I am because I had to for a long time, and so I kind of wanted something to identify me as like not straight because I didn't want it to seem like I was like pretending to be straight, but I didn't necessarily think that like my sexual orientation was other people's business. And so I like the word queer because like it means so many different things to so many different people that I can tell someone that I'm queer and they won't know necessarily like the intricacies of who I'm attracted to, but they do know that like I identify as part of the queer community.
It was definitely hard because I didn't like find anything that like fit like correctly or like felt correct for me for like a while, because like I was like, and I'm still like about like my sexuality, I'm still like questioning it because like I know that I'm not straight, but like it's still like really weird, and I'm like so but like definitely with like my gender identity, I had like a time where I did like identify as like demigender and like trans male, and then like I kind of found like that non-binary trans masculine. I'm like, that fits. Yeah.
Like I think that, you know, the process of finding out who you are is the most important. Like if I had just known like from the very beginning, like been born and know like without any question who I was, I feel like I wouldn't really be who I am right now, because I've been through a lot of like changing labels and trying to find who I am, and I don't know if this who I am right now is gonna be who I am in 10 years, but like I'm not scared that it might change because I know like, you know, in the end it's who I am.
So for me, I kind of right now, and like that might change, especially since like I when I was first like coming into my identity, I identified with trans boys, and then I identified with genderqueer people, and now I'm just like as broad as you can be, non-binary. Like it's definitely my view of myself and my label has changed throughout the years. So like when I first realized that I wasn't cisgendered, I like definitely thought I was trans, and then I was like, well, I'm kind of in the middle, and I didn't know the word for that. And then I found genderqueer, and then so every new word that I found out was really freeing. But at this moment, I feel like there's just so much going on that I just want to like exist. Yeah. So like I just feel like I'm just like an enigma, and I love it. So like yeah, but
It's like why I love the word queer. Cause
Yeah.
it's just like the general term for anyone who's not cis and not straight.
Yeah.
And it's like awesome. It's like so dope.
such a great word.
For me personally, the hardest part of my journey has been taking that step and being like, fuck it, I don't care what other people think because I'm me no matter what. And one of the biggest things that happened during this project for me was finally really understanding what it takes to do that. And part of what helped me with that, a big part of what helped me with that, is this poem by Fatima Asghar, who is a queer Indian woman, who's a poet. And I'd really like to share it with you because I think it's a really amazing metaphor for how to think of yourself and how your opinion of yourself is compared to other people's opinion of yourself, and why it doesn't matter what other people say or think.
Today, I broke your solar system.
Oops, my bad.
Your graph said I was supposed to make a nice little loop around the sun. Nah, I chaos like a motherfucker. Ain't no one can chart me.
All the other planets, they think I'm annoying.
They think I'm an escaped moon, running free. Fuck your moon.
Fuck your solar system.
Fuck your time.
Your year ain't shit but a day to me.
I could spend your whole year turning the winds in my bed.
Thinking about rings.
And how Jupiter should just pussy on up and marry me by now.
Your day? That's an ass wipe.
A sniffle.
Your whole day is barely the start of my sunset.
My name means hell, bitch.
I am hell, bitch.
All the cold you have yet to feel.
Chaos like a motherfucker.
And you tried to order me?
Called me night.
Somewhere in the mess of grass.
And math.
And compass, you tried to make me follow rules.
Rules? Fuck your rules.
Neptune, that bitch slow.
And I deserve all the sun I can get.
And all the blue gold sky I want around me.
It is February 7th,
1979. And my skin is more copper than any sky will ever be.
More metal.
Neptune is bitch sobbing in my rear view.
And I got my running shoes on.
And all this sky, that's all mine. Fuck your order.
Fuck your time.
I realigned the cosmos.
I chaosed all the hell you have yet to feel.
Now all your kids in the classrooms,
They confused.
All their clocks wrong.
They don't even know what the fuck to do.
They've got to memorize new songs and shit.
And all the other planets.
I fucked their orbits.
I shook the sky.
Chaos like a motherfucker.
it is February 7th, 1979.
The sky is blue gold.
The freedom of possibility.
Today, I broke your solar system.
Oops.
My bad.
Great.